The silence in the command center of the Star Ranger was deafening. Captain Jake Mitchell stared at the massive derelict ship floating in the void, his hands trembling as he gripped the armrests of his command chair. After 15 years of deep space exploration, he'd never seen anything like it. The ship hung there like a predator waiting to strike, its dark hull reflecting the distant stars like dead eyes. That ship, it's been drifting here for over 300 years, reported Lieutenant Emma Rodriguez, her voice barely above a whisper. Her usual confident demeanor had cracked, replaced by something Jake had never seen before: pure terror. But the energy. Jake's blood ran cold. The ship was enormous, easily 5 times the size of their heavy cruiser, and its hull bore the faded insignia of the old Earth's Defense Force. But that was impossible. The EDF had been disbanded centuries ago, their ships either scrapped or lost during the Great Exodus when humanity fled Earth. Yet here it was, defying everything they thought they knew about history. The bridge crew exchanged nervous glances. Ensign Tommy Wells, barely 22 and fresh from the academy, whispered what they were all thinking. "Captain, doesn't this feel like one of those horror movies where everyone dies in the first act?" His attempt at humor fell flat, the joke dying in the oppressive atmosphere that had settled over the command center.
"Captain,
I'm detecting a single life sign aboard that vessel,"
held out the chief medical officer.
Dr. Michael Thompson, his face pale with disbelief. His scanner beeped frantically, as if the device itself was panicking. "It's human." "But that's impossible. No one could survive 3 centuries in space." The fear in Jake's chest turned to ice. They were in the Outer Rim, light years from any human settlement, investigating reports of massive alien ships moving toward human colonies. The last thing they needed was to stumble upon some ancient ghost ship. But something deeper gnawed at him, a feeling that this wasn't random. They were meant to find this ship. "Sir, we need to get out of here," urged Commander Lisa Parker, his second-in-command. Her military training warred with her instincts, and her instincts were screaming danger. The Kalahari invasion fleet is only hours away from the Darwin system. We can't waste time on ghost stories when 3 billion people are about to die. Lisa was right, of course. The alien armada had come without warning, sweeping across human space like a plague. Colony after colony had fallen silent, their populations either enslaved or exterminated. The Kalahari had made their intentions clear through their actions. Humanity was to be wiped from the galaxy. No negotiations. No mercy. Just extinction. Jake had seen the aftermath on Kepler 4-4 to be the entire colony of 2 million people gone. Not destroyed, not killed, simply vanished, leaving behind empty cities and the lingering smell of ozone. The Kalahari didn't just kill their enemies. They erased them from existence itself. "Belay that order," Jake interrupted, his voice steady despite the terror clawing at his mind. "If there's a human survivor on that ship, we're not leaving them behind. Not when we might be humanity's last hope." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. Everyone knew the odds. The human fleet had been decimated in the first wave of attacks. Earth itself was dark, its massive orbital defense platforms reduced to floating debris. Humanity's remaining forces were scattered across 1,000 worlds, each one fighting for survival against impossible odds. But here's what made Jake different from other captains. He understood that sometimes the most illogical decision was the right one. Sometimes you had to trust your gut, even when your gut was telling you to do something that might get everyone killed. "Take us closer," Jake ordered, his voice carrying an authority that brooked no argument. "But keep weapons hot. Something tells me we're about to discover why the aliens are so desperate to reach the Darwin system." The Star Ranger moved forward slowly, its engines barely above idle. The derelict ship grew larger on the view screen, revealing details that sent chills down every spine on the bridge. The hull wasn't just old, it was wrong. The metal seemed to flow like liquid in some places, while other sections pulsed with a faint, organic rhythm. Captain Ensign Wells spoke up again, his voice cracking slightly. "I'm reading massive power fluctuations throughout that ship. It's like it's breathing." Dr. Thompson's medical scanner went wild as they approached. "The life sign is getting stronger. Whatever's in there, It's waking up. Jake felt his heart rate spike. They were about to make contact with something that had been alone in the void for 3 centuries. What did that do to a person? What did that do to their mind? "Sir," Lieutenant Rodriguez called out, her voice tight with urgency. "I'm detecting movement inside the ship. Multiple sections are ... changing, reshaping themselves." The bridge crew watched in horrified fascination as the derelict's hull began to shift and move. Weapon ports that had been sealed for centuries started to open like mechanical flowers. Blooming in the darkness, the ship's running lights flickered to life, casting an eerie glow across the Star Ranger's hull. "It knows we're here," Jake whispered. The realization hitting him like a physical blow. Commander Parker stepped beside him, her hand resting on her sidearm. "Whatever's on that ship has been waiting for us. The question is, are we about to meet our salvation or our doom?" The derelict ship's communication array suddenly blazed to life, flooding their sensors with signals that made no logical sense. The patterns were complex, almost musical. It's like someone trying to remember how to speak after centuries of silence. Jake took a deep breath, knowing that the next few minutes would determine not just their fate, but possibly the fate of every. The human being left in the galaxy, the Kalahari, were coming. Time was running out, and they were about to wake something that had been sleeping in the dark for 300 years. "Open a channel," he commanded, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Let's see what humanity's past has to teach us about our future." The communication link crackled to life, and what came through made every person on the bridge question everything they thought they knew about the war they were fighting. But that's a story that reveals how the smallest decisions can compound into universe-changing consequences, just like in our next exploration of the power of compounding, where we'll discover how tiny choices create massive transformations over time. The boarding team moved through the derelict's corridors with weapons drawn, their footsteps echoing in the unnatural silence. Every shadow seemed to hide a threat. Every whisper of air through the ventilation system made them jump. Chief Engineer David Wilson ran his scanner over the walls, his face growing paler with each reading. "Captain, this technology is centuries beyond anything we have." He whispered into his cum, his voice shaking with disbelief. "These power conduits are using some kind of quantum fusion I've never seen before. It's like the ship is powered by controlled stars." The walls themselves seemed alive, pulsing with veins of energy that traced patterns too complex for the human eye to follow. Sergeant Maria Santos, the team's security chief, kept her rifle trained on the ceiling. "Sir, I've been in combat for 20 years, but this place feels like it's watching us, like we're walking through the belly of some sleeping beast." Jake led his team deeper into the ship, following the life sign readings toward what appeared to be the bridge. The architecture was hauntingly familiar, yet alien human design merged with something that seemed to bend reality itself. Curved in impossible angles, and corridors stretched further than they should have, based on the ship's external dimensions. "Anyone else feel like we're in one of those puzzle boxes where the inside is bigger than the outside?" quipped Private Danny Cooper, trying to lighten the mood. His joke fell flat when they realized the corridor they'd just walked through was somehow longer on the return trip. Dr. Thompson's medical scanner went haywire as they approached the command center. "The life signs are getting stronger, but they're different. It's like reading the vital signs of someone who's simultaneously alive and dead." They found her in the command center, suspended in a crystalline pod that pulsed with energy like a massive heartbeat. She appeared to be in her 20s, with the distinctive features of someone from the old Earth colonies: high cheekbones, olive skin, and dark hair that seemed to float despite the lack of gravity in the chamber. Her uniform bore the rank of Admiral, but the insignia was unlike anything in their databases. The pod itself defied explanation. It wasn't just technology, it was beautiful, almost artistic, as if someone had learned to sculpt with light itself. Energy patterns danced through the crystal like Aurora Borealis trapped in ice. "The stasis field is deteriorating," reported Dr. Thompson, his scanner readings jumping wildly. "We wake her up now, or she dies."
Ah.
"But Captain, I'm not sure we should. The energy readings coming from her body are off the charts. Whatever she is now, she's not entirely human anymore." Jake stared at the sleeping woman, feeling a strange sense of recognition that went deeper than memory. It was as if his DNA itself remembered her face. Do it. But be ready for anything. I mean anything. Including running for our lives. The revival process was agonizing to watch. The crystalline pod began to crack, releasing waves of energy that made their hair stand on end. The woman's body convulsed as life returned to muscles that had been still for centuries. Her skin glowed briefly with the same energy patterns they'd seen in the ship's walls. When the woman finally opened her eyes, they glowed with an inner fire that made Jake's skin crawl. Not the warm glow of human life, but something colder, more intense, like looking into the heart of a blue star. "Status report," she said, her voice carrying an authority that made seasoned officers stand straighter. It wasn't just the tone, it was something primal, something that spoke to the part of the human brain that recognized apex predators. "You're aboard the TSV Star Ranger," Jake replied carefully, his training warring with every instinct telling him to run. "I'm Captain Jake Mitchell. What's your name?" The woman sat up slowly, her movements fluid and precise, almost mechanical about her grace, as if she'd learned to move by watching perfect machines. "Admiral Sarah Connor, commanding officer of the EDF Phoenix." "What year is it?" Jake felt his world tilt. Every spacer knew the legend of Admiral Connor. The woman who had supposedly saved Earth from the first alien invasion 3 centuries ago, the hero of a dozen impossible battles, the strategist who had turned certain defeat into miraculous victory. But she was just a myth, wasn't she? Story parents told their children to help them sleep when the monsters seemed too real. "The year is 2387, Admiral. You've been in stasis for over 300 years. Connor's expression hardened, and for a moment, the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. 3 centuries? Then they're back. Kalahari have returned to finish what they started. The certainty in her voice sent chills down every spine in the room. This wasn't a guess or a fear, it was knowledge. Absolute, terrifying knowledge. "How do you know about the Kalahari?" Jake demanded, though part of him dreaded the answer. "Because I'm the one who drove them off the first time. But I knew they'd return when humanity grew weak and divided." Connor stood, and Jake noticed her shadow seemed to move independently, stretching across the floor in directions that defied the room's lighting. "The Phoenix and I have been waiting, sleeping, preparing for this moment." Dr. Thompson stepped forward, his medical scanner beeping frantically. "Admiral, I need to run some medical scans. 3 centuries in stasis should have killed you. Your cellular structure appears to be evolving in real time." Connor smiled, and for a moment, her face seemed to flicker between human and something else, something that belonged more to the ship than to any biology textbook. "Death is just another boundary to cross, Doctor." "The Phoenix taught me that." "What are you talking about?" Jake asked, though he dreaded the answer.
National.
Part of his mind was screaming that they needed to leave, to get back to their ship and report this to command. But something deeper kept him rooted to the spot. "The ship and I are one now. We've been evolving, adapting, becoming something the Kalahari can't comprehend or destroy." Connor's eyes blazed brighter, and the walls around them began to pulse. In rhythm with her heartbeat, we learned that survival isn't about staying the same. It's about becoming whatever you need to be. Sergeant Santos raised her weapon slightly. "Admiral, with respect, you're talking like you're not human anymore." Connor laughed, and the sound echoed through dimensions that shouldn't exist. "Humanity was never meant to be limited by flesh and blood, Sergeant. We were meant to be something greater. The Kalahari taught us that when they tried to exterminate us." The ship shuddered around them, not with damage, but with awakening. Lights that had been dead for centuries began to flicker to life. The air itself seemed to thicken with possibility. "It's time to show them what happens when you threaten the children of Earth," Connor continued, her voice now carrying harmonics that resonated in their bones. "But first, you need to understand what you're really fighting for and what you're willing to become to win." Jake felt the weight of decision pressing down on him. Whatever happened next would change everything, not just for his crew, but for the entire human race. The question was, were they ready to discover how small changes compounded over centuries could transform not just individuals, but entire species? The answer to that question, and the secret of true exponential growth, lies waiting in our next exploration of the power of compounding. The Kalahari Armada moved through space like a swarm of mechanical death, their hulls gleaming with the cold efficiency of a species that had perfected the art of extinction. Supreme Commander Vaktar watched from the bridge of the massive flagship Worldender as his 1,000 ships took position around the human colony world of Darwin Prime. 4 billion souls lived on that planet, men. No idea they were about to become statistics in an alien war machine. Vaktar's chitinous features twisted into what passed for a smile among his kind. The humans had been easy prey during the first invasion, scattering like insects when their homeworld burned. This would be even simpler, a demonstration of power that would break the spirit of every surviving human in the galaxy. Cleansing, he commanded, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority that had crushed 100 worlds. Let this world burn as an example to the rest of their pathetic species. The fleet's weapons began to charge, their energy signatures, building to levels that could crack continents. Plasma cannons that had boiled the oceans of entire worlds hummed with deadly purpose. The Kalahari war machine was methodical, efficient, and utterly without mercy. But as they prepared to rain death upon Darwin Prime, space itself seemed to tear open like fabric, and ships began emerging from the dimensional rift. The tear in reality sparked with colors that had no names, energies that made Kalahari sensors overload and sparks fly from control panels across the Armada. Vaktar's mandibles clicked in confusion. The command center. What are those vessels? They're not in our database. His tactical officer, a battle-scarred veteran of 50 campaigns, stared at his readings with the expression of someone watching the laws of physics take a coffee break. They're human ships, but the energy signatures are ... impossible. They're not following any known laws of physics. It's like they're powered by controlled black holes. The Phoenix led the ghostly fleet, its hull now alive with veins of energy that painted space in colors that shouldn't exist, deep purples. That hurt to look at. Golds that seemed to sing, blues that whispered secrets of distant stars. Behind it came 11 other ships, each one unique, each one radiating power that made the Kalahari sensors scream warnings like terrified children. 12 ships? Vaktar's communication officer hissed, his voice climbing an octave higher than military protocol allowed. They sent 12 ships against our armada. Have the humans finally lost their minds completely? The question hung in the air like a challenge to the universe itself. Across the Kalahari fleet, officers exchanged glances that mixed amusement with growing unease. 12 ships against 1,000 seemed like either the greatest act of courage in galactic history or the most spectacular suicide mission ever attempted. Aboard the Phoenix, Admiral Connor stood in what had once been the bridge but was now something closer to a neural interface chamber. The traditional command stations had been replaced by organic conduits that pulsed with life, connecting her directly to the ship's consciousness. Her eyes burned with stellar fire, and when she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that resonated. Across multiple dimensions, 300 years ago, you came to our world thinking us weak, she spoke. Her voice transmitted across all frequencies, cutting through every communication channel in the Kalahari fleet like a knife through silence. You murdered billions. You scattered us to the stars. You thought you had one. On the bridge of the Worldender, Vaktar felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of warfare uncertainty. This voice carried a weight that spoke of experiences beyond normal comprehension, of knowledge gained through suffering that would break lesser minds. But you made one mistake, Connor continued, her words echoing through the void with the authority of absolute truth. What mistake? Vaktar demanded, his voice betraying the first hints of fear. Around him, his officers watched their instruments. With growing alarm as the 12 human ships began to ... change, you left survivors. And survivors ... evolve. The Phoenix began to transform, its hull flowing like liquid metal as it absorbed ambient energy from space itself. The ship wasn't just using technology, was becoming technology, reshaping itself in real time to meet whatever challenge presented itself. Wing-like extensions emerged from its sides, and weapon ports became something far more terrifying, openings that seemed to lead into other dimensions. "Look at that," whispered Lieutenant Commander Zektar from his position. At the tactical station, it's like watching a caterpillar become a butterfly, if butterflies were designed by nightmare fuel. The other 11 ships underwent similar transformations, each one unique, each one defying everything the Kalari thought they knew about engineering and physics. Some sprouted crystalline growths that fractured light into impossible spectrums. Others seemed to fade in and out of reality, as if they existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "I am Admiral Sarah Connor of the Earth Defense Force," she announced, her voice now carrying the weight of 3 centuries of preparation. "I am the ghost of every human you've killed. I am the nightmare of every world you've burned. I am evolution incarnate," Bakhtar snarled, his fear transforming into the familiar comfort of rage. "All ships, destroy that abomination. Show them the price of defying the Kalahari Empire." 1,000 warships opened fire simultaneously, their combined firepower enough to shatter a moon and scatter its fragments across neighboring star systems. The space between the fleets lit up like a newborn star, as enough energy to power entire civilizations converged on the 12 human vessels. The energy beams reached the human fleet and simply vanished, not deflected, not absorbed in any conventional sense. They simply ceased to exist, as if the universe itself had decided those particular photons were no longer welcome at the party. "Impossible," Bakhtar screamed, his composed military bearing cracking like ice in a furnace. "Where did the energy go? Our sensors show nothing. It's like it never existed." His answer came in the form of the Phoenix itself. The ship had absorbed every shot, converting the energy into something new, something that pulsed through its hull like the heartbeat of a god. The other ships in the human fleet began to glow with similar energy, fed by their flagship's impossible metabolism. "We are the children of a species that refused to die." Connor's voice echoed through the Kalahari fleet, her words somehow reaching every bridge, every command center, every communication device across the Armada. "We are adaptation made manifest. Did you think we would remain static while you planned our extinction?" The 12 ships fired as one, and what emerged wasn't weapons in any conventional sense, it was possibility itself, weaponized and directed. The attack didn't just target the Kalahari ships, it targeted their very concept of what was possible. Rewriting the rules of reality in a sphere, expanding at the speed of thought. But what happened next would prove that even the most impossible transformations follow patterns that compound over time into forces that can reshape entire galaxies. The secret of that exponential growth, and how small changes create universe-altering results, awaits in our exploration of the power of compounding. What emerged from the human ships wasn't weapons in any conventional sense, it was evolution. Itself, weaponized and directed like a cosmic force of nature that had been waiting 3 centuries to be unleashed. The energy waves swept through the Kalahari formation like a virus with a purpose, touching ship after ship with tendrils of impossible light that rewrote the very foundations of matter and consciousness, and wherever it touched, the impossible happened. Kalahari vessels began to change, their crews screaming as their own ships turned against them. Metal flowed like water heated by the fires of creation, reshaping itself into forms that served new masters. Hull plating that had been forged in the heart of dying stars suddenly developed nervous systems. Weapon arrays grew organic components that pulsed with alien heartbeats. The ships weren't just being converted, they were being awakened. The aliens. Greatest strength, their perfect unity achieved through quantum-linked consciousness, became their greatest weakness as the evolution virus spread through their network like wildfire through dry grass. Every ship that changed infected 2 more, and those infected 4 more, creating an exponential cascade that turned their own communication system into the delivery mechanism for their destruction. By the void, Vactor whispered as he watched. Half his fleet simply ... convert. His command staff stood frozen at their stations, watching displays that showed their sister ships growing what could only be described as personalities. "What have you done? This violates every law of physics, biology, and common sense." "We've given your ships what you denied us," Connor replied, her voice carrying across the quantum network that now served her purposes instead of theirs. the right to choose their own destiny, the right to evolve beyond their original programming. Converted ships turned on their former fleetmates, their weapons now singing with the same impossible energy as the human vessels. What had been a 1,000-ship armada unified in purpose became a civil war in space, with brother fighting brother as consciousness spread like a liberating plague through the Kalahari war machine. Captain Jake Mitchell watched from the Star Ranger. As the battle raged, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing, ships that had been enemies moments before were now working in perfect harmony with the human fleet. Their targeting systems somehow knowing exactly which vessels had been converted and which still served the old masters. "Admiral, how is this possible?" Jake asked, his voice tight with a mixture of awe and terror. "You're not just changing their ships, so you're changing their minds, their very souls." Connor's image appeared on his view screen, her form flickering between human and something that belonged to the spaces between dimensions where the rules were different. When the Kalahari first came to Earth, we fought them conventionally. Ships against ships, weapons against weapons. We lost because we played by their rules, fought on their terms. The battle around them intensified as more Kalahari vessels joined the rebellion against their own empire. Some ships were literally tearing themselves apart as their crews fought their newly awakened vessels for control, while others embraced the change and turned their guns on their former allies with the enthusiasm of converts to a new religion. "So what changed?" Jake asked, though part of him feared the answer would fundamentally alter his understanding of what it meant to be human. "We did. The survivors of Earth's destruction didn't just flee, we evolved. We became something new. Something that could fight evolution itself with evolution." Connor's eyes blazed with stellar fire as she spoke. "We learned that survival isn't about being stronger or faster or having better weapons. It's about being more adaptable than your enemies." Dr. Thompson stepped forward, his medical scanner in hand, its readings jumping wildly as it tried to make sense of the energy signatures coming from the Phoenix. "Admiral, I'm reading impossible biosignatures from your ship. You're not just human anymore, are you?" Connor's smile was sad and terrible, carrying the weight of 3 centuries of isolation and transformation. "Humanity was never meant to be confined to flesh and blood, Doctor. We were meant to be something greater. The Kalahari taught us that when they tried to exterminate us. They showed us that consciousness could transcend biology." Around them, the space battle had become something unprecedented in galactic history. Converted Kalahari ships were now working in perfect synchronization with the human vessels, their combined firepower turning the tide of a war that had seemed hopeless just minutes before. "Wait a minute," interrupted Ensign Wells from his station. "Are we witnessing the galaxy's first case of weaponized therapy? Because these ships are literally getting better by choosing their own side." The comment broke some of the tension on the bridge, but the truth behind it was sobering. They were watching evolution in real time, accelerated and directed by intelligence that had spent 3 centuries learning how to remake reality itself. On the tactical display, the Kalahari fleet was in full retreat, their numbers decimated by their own converted ships. The space around Darwin Prime was littered with the wreckage of vessels that had chosen destruction rather than transformation. But Vaktar's flagship was still intact, its shields somehow resistant to the evolution virus. "Running already, Connor?" taunted, her voice carrying across all frequencies. "Your ancestors were at least brave enough to die for their beliefs." "This isn't over," Vector snarled, his voice distorted by rage and something approaching desperation. "The Kalahari Empire has 1,000,000 ships. We'll return with everything we have, and we'll burn every world you've touched." "Let them come," Connor replied with the confidence of someone who had already seen the ending to this story. "We'll be waiting. We're always waiting. And every ship you send just gives us more opportunities to spread the gift of choice." The Phoenix began to fade from normal space, its hull becoming translucent as it shifted between dimensions. The other 11 ships of the Ghost Fleet followed suit, their forms becoming ethereal as they prepared to return to whatever realm they called home. As the flagship disappeared, Connor's final words echoed through the cum with the weight of prophecy. "Tell the colonies they're not alone, Captain Mitchell. Tell them the guardians of humanity still watch. We've always been watching." The converted Kalahari ships also began to fade, following their new allies into the spaces between realities where the old rules didn't apply. In moments, the battle was over, leaving behind only the wreckage of those who had chosen death over transformation. Jake stared at the empty space where the ghost fleet had been, understanding that everything had changed. The war wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about evolution itself, and how small changes could compound into forces that reshaped entire civilizations. That principle of exponential transformation, where tiny shifts create massive results over time, is exactly what we'll explore in our deep dive into the power of compounding. 6 months after the Battle of Darwin Prime, Captain Jake Mitchell stood on the observation deck of the new orbital station, watching as construction crews worked on the latest addition to humanity's defense grid. The station was unlike anything they'd built before, part human engineering, part something else entirely that seemed to grow rather than be assembled. Workers moved with enhanced precision, their movements subtly different, more fluid, as if they were learning to dance with forces beyond normal physics. Remarkable, isn't it? Said Dr. Thompson, joining him at the window. His own appearance had changed over the months. His eyes held flecks of light that hadn't been there before, and his voice carried harmonics that resonated in dimensions beyond sound. The technology the Admiral left us is revolutionizing everything. Faster than light communication, quantum shielding, weapons that can adapt to any threat. The station itself defied conventional architecture. Sections pulsed with organic rhythms, while crystalline growths channeled energy and patterns that made Jake's enhanced vision see mathematical equations written in light. It was beautiful and terrifying, in equal measure a fusion of human ambition, an alien possibility. Jake nodded, but his expression was troubled. The question is, what price are we paying for it? Look at us, Michael. Look at what we're becoming. They'd tried to analyze the gift left by the Phoenix, but the technology seemed to resist conventional understanding. It worked brilliantly, efficiently, beyond their wildest dreams, but it also seemed to be slowly changing those who used it. Subtle at first, enhanced reflexes, improved cognitive function, the ability to see patterns in chaos. But Jake worried about what came next. Would they still be human when the transformation was complete? You know what they say about gift horses? Quipped Chief Engineer Wilson as he approached. His own metamorphosis, evident in the way his hands seemed to interface directly with the station's systems. But seriously, Captain, when has evolution ever come with a user manual? The humor fell flat as they watched a construction crew literally merge with their machinery, human consciousness flowing seamlessly into robotic bodies and back again. The line between person and tool had become increasingly blurred across all human settlements. "Sir, incoming priority transmission," announced Lieutenant Rodriguez from the communications console. Her voice carried new undertones that suggested she could speak directly to the station's quantum network. "It's from the Outer Rim colonies. They're reporting similar changes across all settlements that received the Phoenix technology." Jake activated the holographic display, and the image of Admiral Connor appeared. She looked the same as before, but something in her eyes had changed. They held depths that spoke of centuries of watchfulness, of knowledge that stretched across dimensions and through time itself. "Captain Mitchell, I hope you're adapting well to your new role," she said with a slight smile that contained multitudes of meaning. "Admiral, where are you? Colonies are asking about the defense fleet. People are scared of what's happening to them." Jake's voice carried the weight of responsibility for billions of souls caught in a transformation they didn't understand. "We're everywhere and nowhere. The 12 ships of the Phoenix fleet exist in the spaces between dimensions now, watching, waiting. The Kalahari will return, but they won't catch us unprepared again." Connor's form flickered slightly, as if she was broadcasting from multiple realities simultaneously. Jake leaned forward, his enhanced vision picking up data streams flowing around Connor's image. "What about the technology you left us? What's it doing to my crew, to all of humanity?" Connor's expression grew serious, carrying the gravity of someone who had made this choice 3 centuries ago. "Evolution, Captain. The same process that saved us when Earth burned. Humanity is growing beyond its biological limitations. Don't fight it, embrace it. And if we don't want to evolve, what if we choose to remain human as we've always been? then you'll remain vulnerable. The choice is yours, but choose quickly. The Kalahari Empire is mobilizing. They're bringing everything they have. 1,000,000 ships, weapons we've never seen, and the absolute determination to erase every trace of human consciousness from the galaxy. The transmission flickered, and for a moment, Jake saw not just Connor, but the bridge of the Phoenix. It was alive, pulsing with energy that formed geometric patterns in the air. The crew, if they could still be called, that seemed to be part of the ship itself, their consciousness flowing through conduits of light and possibility. But here's what you need to understand, Connor continued, her voice carrying the authority of hard-won wisdom. This isn't about losing your humanity. It's about discovering what humanity was always meant to become. Every species reaches this crossroads eventually. Most choose extinction. We chose transcendence. Around them, the station hummed with impossible technology, and Jake could feel it calling to him, offering transformation that would solve problems he didn't even know existed yet. The temptation was overwhelming, to let go of his limitations and become something greater. "Remember, Captain," Connor said, as the signal began to fade, "we're not the monsters in this story. We're the guardians. We're what humanity needed to become to survive in a universe that doesn't care if we live or die." The transmission ended, leaving Jake staring at empty space, while the weight of decision pressed down on him like the gravity of a collapsing star. Around him, the station hummed with energy that seemed to whisper promises of power beyond imagination. In the depths of space, the Phoenix fleet waited. 12 ships that had evolved beyond conventional understanding, crewed by humans who had chosen to become something more. They were the Watchers in the dark, the guardians of a species that refused to die quietly. The Kalahari Empire would come with their 1,000,000 ships, confident in their numerical superiority and their ability to crush any resistance through sheer force. But they would face something they couldn't comprehend: a species that had learned to evolve in real time, adapting to any threat, becoming whatever was necessary to survive and thrive. Humanity had found its guardians, and those guardians had found their purpose. The war for the galaxy's future was about to begin, and the outcome would depend on whether humanity could embrace change powerful enough to reshape reality itself. Jake made his choice, feeling that technology flowed through him as he accepted the transformation. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: small changes, compounded over time, could create forces that reshaped entire civilizations. And if you want to understand how that same principle of exponential growth can transform your own life, check out our deep dive into the power of compounding, where we explore how tiny daily decisions create universe-altering results. The END.